Hi, VencoreWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Thursday, August 27th. Very nice weather pattern continues here in the I-95 corridor for the next couple of days. Comfortable temperatures and humidity levels for this time of the year in D.C., Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York City. The weekend, however, will present some warmer and more humid air into the I-95 corridor. In fact, high temperatures by Sunday and Monday should flirt with the 90-degree mark up and down the I-95 corridor, and very likely that high temperature flirtation with 90 degrees will continue on Tuesday and Wednesday as well. But basically a quiet weather pattern for the Mid-Atlantic for the next several days. I thought we'd focus mainly on Tropical Storm Erika this morning. This is the latest prediction of the storm track by the NOAA Hurricane Center. Erika sits right in this region right here, the easternmost islands of the Caribbean, as a tropical storm. Sustained winds about 50 miles per hour, currently moving to the west about 16 miles per hour. Basic prediction over the next 48 hours is for a west to northwest track of Erika. After that point in time, by Sunday or Monday, by the time it reaches right around the latitude of Miami, there are indications that it could start to turn to the north and ultimately to the north and east, perhaps even avoiding completely making landfall in the U.S. Florida has actually amazingly not been hit by a hurricane of any intensity since that very active year of 2005. In fact, Hurricane Wilma of October 2005 was the last hurricane to strike Florida. Certainly, that drought is in jeopardy right now, but there are a couple of scenarios that could continue that drought in the state of Florida. One is the storm could ultimately not make landfall and turn away just at the time it reaches the latitude of southern Florida. Another potential scenario is that the storm just weakens and is not even hurricane status by the time it reaches the Bahamas or the eastern part of Florida. We'll talk about all these factors that could cause some weakening over the next 48 hours, over the next several minutes. Well, before we get to the latest satellite imagery loop of Tropical Storm Erika, I thought I'd show the latest ensemble run of the GFS model. This has a basic west to northwest track for the next 48 hours or so, or 72 hours or so, and then by the time it reaches again the latitude of southern Florida, it starts to turn sharply to the north and then ultimately to the north and east, perhaps harmlessly out to sea. Of course, this time frame here is the most uncertain. General agreement for the next 48 hours or so to the west-northwest. Beyond that, there is certainly some disagreement amongst some of the computer forecast models. Some models have it moving into the Carolinas. Others have it just meandering around this part, the Bahamas, to near Florida for a couple of days. And certainly the possibility of landfall in Florida is still on the table here. But again, the GFS ensemble run of late last night turns into the north and then northeast before it ever makes landfall. Well, here's the latest satellite imagery loop from GOES satellite. The first several frames are actually infrared and then followed by visible satellite images once the sun came up. A couple things I want to point out. First of all, it's a very large storm compared to Danny. Danny was kind of a puny hurricane. Even though it became briefly a major hurricane, it was a small hurricane. This is a rather large-looking storm, rather robust, and that could play a role in its encounter with vertical wind shear and dry air over the next 48 hours or so. The fact that Danny was so small did not help its cause when it encountered those weakening factors of vertical wind shear and dry air that originated off of the western African coastline. The fact that Erika is a little bit larger, more robust, gives it a better chance of surviving that time period of 48 hours or so when it will encounter some vertical wind shear that we'll talk about over the next couple of minutes and some dry air. Another thing I want to point out, notice last couple of frames here show some convection, some thunderstorm to the north and west of the main area right here. What the reconnaissance aircraft observations have found is it's kind of a disjoint to the center of Erika right now, perhaps a low-level center hidden by these clouds right in this region right here, and more of a mid to upper level part of the atmosphere center over to the north and west. Basically a disjointed center of Erika right now, kind of inhibited any strengthening in the overnight hours, and until that center becomes one large vertical column, it will probably continue to inhibit strengthening of Erika. So a disjointed center over the past 24 hours, but over the next 24 to 48 hours, a couple other factors will play a role, perhaps in weakening of Erika: vertical wind shear and dry air. Well, let's now talk about vertical wind shear. This is a product put out by the University of Wisconsin, CIMSS branch of the University of Wisconsin. First of all, here is the location of Tropical Storm Erika right at the eastern edge of the Caribbean Sea. This particular map puts out shear tendency over the past 24 hours. Shear indicated by the orange and yellow region right here. And notice this area just ahead of Tropical Storm Erika of vertical wind shear. Basically, wind shear can be defined as a change of wind direction with altitude. It tends to inhibit strengthening of a tropical system, perhaps could even rip it apart as it did with Danny. Vertical wind shear plays an important role in El Nino summers. Even though El Nino is a tropical Pacific phenomenon with warmer than normal sea surface temperatures, it tends to cause increased wind shear levels in the tropical Atlantic. So in general, El Nino summers are below normal summers for tropical activity in the Atlantic Ocean. And indeed, Danny was ripped apart by some vertical wind shear, and Erika will soon encounter an area of some vertical wind shear. Well, one other tool that can be used by meteorologists to see if there's vertical wind shear is a water vapor imagery loop. This is from GOES, and it shows a water vapor band of the GOES satellite. A couple things I want to point out. First of all, here's Erika right here. The higher moisture areas are shown by brighter, whiter areas on this particular imagery loop. Here's that area of convection breaking out kind of to the north and west of the main part of the convective associated with Erika. Here's the island of Puerto Rico. Now notice over the central Caribbean, this moisture, indicated here by the brighter whites, is moving basically to the east-northeast. But just north of Haiti and the Dominican Republic, this area of moisture is moving to the north or northwest. In other words, this area right here is an area of wind shear, a change of wind direction. Here, moisture pushing to the east-northeast. Here, moisture pushing to the north and northwest. We saw this on the last map, vertical wind shear in this area right here, and that could very well inhibit the strengthening of Erika over the next 24 to 48 hours or so. One other thing I want to point out, notice the moisture moving basically to the northeast across Florida off the east coast, and this is kind of indicative of the upper level wind flow that could ultimately push Erika, if it survives the wind shear and the dry air, to the north or northeast right around the time it approaches the east coast of the U.S. Well, vertical wind shear is one factor that could cause some weakening or certainly reduce the strengthening of Erika over the next 48 hours or so. Dry air is also a potential weakening factor. This dry air originated over the Saharan Desert region of Africa. It moved from the east to the west, riding along with the tropical trade winds. And this is another interesting product put out by the University of Wisconsin, CIMSS. The Saharan Desert air is indicated on this particular map by yellows, oranges, and reds. And notice right in this region right here, here's Erika, right at the eastern edge of the Caribbean Sea, and just to the north and west, an area of dry air. So not only is there some vertical wind shear to the north and west of Erika, but there's an area of dry air. Both of these factors could indeed cause some weakening or certainly prevent important strengthening of Erika in the 48 hours or so time period. Beyond that, conditions look more favorable. So if indeed Erika survives its encounter with vertical wind shear and the dry air, it could start to strengthen in the area over the Bahamas or just to the east of Florida in 3 or 4 days or so. Well, one other website that puts out a cool product related to the Saharan Desert is earth.nullschool.net. The Saharan Desert on this particular wind map shown here, indicated here in the yellows, and here is the circulation pattern, the wind circulation pattern right at the moment around Tropical Storm Erika. Just to the north and west, there is an area shown here by the yellows and greens. This is dry air associated with the Saharan Desert air mass that moved from the east to the west off the African coast from several days ago, and it is in the path of Erika, so certainly that'll be a factor in 48 hours or so. Well, let's wrap up with a couple of maps from tropicaltidbits.com. This is from last night's ensemble run of the European model, and it's the 500 millibar height anomaly map for late in the weekend, late Sunday night time frame. A couple things I want to point out. First of all, here's a subtropical ridge, and the flow around that is in this general fashion, following this height line right here. And notice right along the east coast, it kind of turns sharply to the north and then ultimately to the north and east. And again, this is a factor here in the potential steering of Tropical Storm Erika, first to the west and northwest, and then once it reaches around the latitude of southern Florida, perhaps to the north and ultimately to the north and east. In general, however, it's very weak steering currents in this area come the latter part of the weekend, so could be a slow-moving storm at this point as well. And there is a scenario that Erika could kind of meander around in this region for a couple of days at the end of the weekend or the early part of next week. Well, finally, looking way ahead, this is Labor Day weekend, about 10 days out, again from last night's ensemble run of the European model, again the 500 millibar anomaly, height anomaly pattern. Just want to point out here that here we have an above normal height anomaly showing up in the eastern part of Canada come around Labor Day weekend.